I made the decision after I made that $8,000. I told my wife, I'm going to quit my job and do this full time. Now, she looked at me. She was like, what the bleep are you doing?
Hello everyone, welcome again to the Untrained Professionals Podcast, hosted by myself, Anders Young, and Ryan Cohn. Today we have the pleasure of having my friend Brandon Mann as our guest today. Brandon is a full-time fix and flip investor. He's a real estate agent and a business owner. I've worked on many of his different projects for him with him and a lot of other investors, but I can say he's one of the best at what he does, so I'm really excited to get him on the podcast today. Share his story with us, his expertise, and hopefully some thoughts on the market. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Brandon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we just kind of wanted to start off like getting your story and just also a quick rundown of who you are and kind of what your business looks like today.
Okay. My story didn't have any real estate background. Nothing coming out of college. Actually got out of college in 04. Got into the stockbroker, mindset. Was trading stocks, working at E-Trade, Bank of America, those kinds of places. So I was in North Carolina until 2010 when I moved here to Florida. And then got started in real estate a couple years later.
So what kind of inspired you to do that, or how did you get introduced to it?
So back in 06, to date myself, I was 23 at the time. I was making a whopping $25,000 a year. Which is a ton for a college graduate, right? Not really. But back in 06, you could get 100% financing on a mortgage. I used to call it 80-20 loans. So one bank would loan you 80%. The other bank would go into second position and loan you the other 20%. So As a 23-year-old, I had an 800 credit score, made a whopping $25,000, and for $2,000, they handed me the keys to a house. I lived in it for 3 years. Now, 06 was kind of peak of the market. 08 or 09 came around, and the house I spent $130,000 for was worth $100,000. I had gotten laid off a couple times in the banking industry in 08, and was finishing my MBA at the time. And a buddy of mine lived in Florida. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. Mm-hmm. And a buddy of mine lived in Florida. And that time I didn't have, wife or girlfriend in North Carolina. He lived 10 minutes from the beach in Florida and needed a roommate. And I said, man, $300 a month to split a house with him? It's, what the heck? 10 minutes from the beach, it's fun. Yeah. So I moved down here and had to rent that house out because I couldn't sell it at the time. And I couldn't bring $20,000 to closing to sell it. So I became an accidental landlord with no other options. So that was my first venture into real estate. Was a long distance landlord. My mom was my property manager. I'd send her to meet people over there, meet tenants. I can't believe I did that, but so that was my first real estate venture. Was kind of, what do I do? I have to.
So did that that didn't sour your sour real estate at all in your mind? You still how'd you go from there? Okay, well now I'm gonna, or was that just working out okay as an investment property? How'd you go from there to start investing again in Florida?
I cleared a whopping $150 a month when all was said and done, and I thought, man, when you're making 25, I didn't have a job at the time, so I thought $150 a month was sweet. Growing up, I always had the mindset of buying things low, selling them for a little higher. Back in middle school, this is kind of give you my background. Back in middle school, okay, and that was a long time ago, but back in middle school, I would buy, they used to sell gum, okay, and it was come in a sleeve of 10 little 5-packs. And you could pay $1 for 10 of these little packs. So you had 50 sticks of gum for $1. And I would put those in my book bag. I'd go to Walmart and spend like $10. I'd buy up 10 sleeves of these things. And I would deal gum. I was a gum dealer in middle school. I would sell those packs for 50 cents a piece. So every $1 that I spent, I would sell for $5. Now, when you're 11 years old, you're like, dude, that's a great investment. 5 times my money.
Yeah.
So I made $100 or $200 every month dealing gum, right? That's just kind of how that's my mindset. It's always been, can I buy something, sell it to somebody else for a little bit more? And so a couple years after I moved down to Florida became, well, I can do that with houses too. So,
did you have any, and so you started doing it in houses basically, then you're kind of at the bottom of the market, right? Like, would this be like 2010, 2011 or something?
Yeah, 2010, I still was in the banking industry. I got a job with a small investment bank, and we were helping a lot of these small community banks sell their assets, because in 2010 was really the bottom of the market, and all the banks had loans on houses that were not worth what they loaned the money on.
Mm-hmm.
And people who didn't care about their credit said, hey, I know I owe you $150,000 on this house, bank, but the house is worth $100,000, so here's the keys. And the banks were stuck with assets that were not worth what they had loaned the money out on. So a lot of banks went belly up because of that, and we were helping banks sell assets at a discount. I got my real estate license with that company. But that's when I started to see, oh, I can pay the bank $50,000 for that house. They loaned it out for $150,000. It's worth $100,000, but it's run down. I saw people buying houses for 50 cents on the dollar at really low, $50,000 would get you a decent house in a decent area back in 2010. But,
so you were buying foreclosures at that point.
Well, at that point, we were selling them for the banks. I was the one going out and finding investors to buy these foreclosures or or even buy the notes. So that instead of the bank foreclosing, we would sell the paper to an investor who would then foreclose.
Okay, so they would go through that whole process with whoever
Correct.
the owner was.
Well, the banks were more willing to just take 50 cents on the dollar than to fight the whole foreclosure process, and the homeowner would file bankruptcy and drag it into the courts for a few years. The banks just said 50 cents on the dollar, we're selling it. So
so what was the first one where you like, okay, these things are so cheap, I gotta get in on this?
So fast forward a little bit, 2014. Let's see. I got married in 2012. I got to think about it. So I got married in 2012. So in 2014, I was working at Raymond James, and again on the stock trading desk. And I would be taking calls to sell millions of dollars of stock. But I was, between calls or even during calls, I was reading, you guys may have heard of Bigger Pockets, the website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I was super active on that. That was on my computer all day, every day. To the point where I would screw up a trade every so often. Wait, did you say buy or sell 1 million shares of Microsoft? And so that's where I really got my education in real estate, was Bigger Pockets, was just reading forums and chatting and reading articles all day, every day.
Wow.
So I decided, shoot, I'm going to go for it. And so in 2014, I found a house, and I had some friends who had money, and I convinced a guy to loan me $55,000 to buy a $55,000 house. And I had walked it and thought, we could fix it up, put about 25 grand into it. And I thought I could sell it for 100. Okay, so I'd be all in for 80, a little bit of holding costs, sell it for 100, a little bit of closing costs. I thought I could make, 10 grand. So he loaned me the money. I made 8 grand on that house. Now, when you're working, at that point, I think I was making 50 grand a year, Raymond James. So I made 8 grand. I thought, you know what? I think I can do this on my own. I think I could do this full time. So that was my first flip. Just a very basic, paint, flooring, kitchen, what we would call a fluff and buff rehab, right? A very simple. We didn't move any walls, didn't move any plumbing, just lipstick kind of job.
Yeah. Did you have any kind of construction experience when you got started at all?
No, I didn't own a hammer.
Wow.
I just went for it, yeah.
I was still managing the job while working full-time at Raymond James. So I'm texting under the desk, to the guy who's there all day. And I was spending the evenings running up to the house after my son would go to bed. And, it was nights and weekends I was buying materials and ordering stuff. And
Wow. How long did it take you until the first one was done, from, closing on it to being able to put it up for sale?
3 to 4 months from purchase to sale. So
That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
So from there, you just start sort of trying to have one going kind of all the time.
So
and
at that point it was 2015. At this point, I'm a married guy. I have a wife who quit her job because we had a son. At that time, he was 1 year old. So I was the only breadwinner. And, I had a guaranteed salary, 50 grand. Not great, not horrible. We could pay the bills. And I made the decision after I made that 8 grand. I told my wife, I'm going to quit my job and do this full time. Now, she looked at me. She was like, what the bleep are you doing? But again, I had that mindset. It was the gum dealer mindset. Like, I think I'm smart enough. At this point, I'm like, man, I'm college degree. I got an MBA. Like, I could figure out how to buy stuff and sell it for a little higher. Surely I could do it. And I went for it. I quit my job, walked away from the only guaranteed income I had. We had a little money in the bank, but that was going to go quickly. So
yeah,
it was one of those, a lot of people go to the edge of the cliff and look over and are afraid to step, or they kind of put their toe over the edge and like, should I go? And I basically took myself to the cliff and just said, go.
Yeah.
Or baby bird, learn how to fly. I'm pushing you out of the nest, and you better learn how to fly or you're going to hit the ground hard.
Nice. So what was the next one that you did after that, after you took that jump?
I made 15 grand the first year.
Okay.
I took out a home equity loan, and we basically lived off of that $75,000 home equity loan. I told my wife, listen, we're gonna use it to improve the house. Man, I used that to invest in the next one. We made 15 grand, and all was said and done, we made 15 grand the first year. We basically lived off that HELOC.
Wow.
Holy
and I
crap.
thought, man, what did I do? 15 grand, like, but I quickly learned some just, I've always been a good negotiator, figuring out a way to buy something at discount or whatever. I've always been a good haggler, whether it was gum or anything. I was always, so I quickly learned how to assess a deal. The ball started to really roll in 2006.
You think what made a big difference was like getting the when you're buying the deal, you're already getting it at a discount. That's kind of where you're sort of guaranteeing like a little bit of your profit rather than just buying for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And what kind of strategies do you try to employ when you're negotiating like that? or did you sort of learn to start doing? Maybe it's different for every deal, but
it is. I don't know that I had any strategies at that time. That was 2016. The market really had bounced and was going up. We all look like geniuses in 2016 and 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 and 22 because whatever you bought 6 months ago was worth more, even if you didn't do anything to it. So some of it was dumb luck, we'll say that. I don't know that I had any good strategies. It was, I think the best strategies I had were leaning on people who were just kicking butt in it. When I quit, I went to a couple guys. I went to some networking meetings, and you could quickly realize the guys that had tons of properties. And I went and introduced myself, said, listen, I want to take you out to lunch. I'll buy it. I just want to pick your brain for an hour. I want to ride in your car for a day. I want to go with you to Lowe's. And I just want to learn, take me to your job site. I'll stay quiet, and I just want to hear you assess maybe a potential deal, how you're handling a current job, anything like that. So I was a sponge to, it's the saying that you associate yourself with the people that you want to be like, let's call them role models, but those guys were kicking butt. They had hundreds of houses and probably millions of dollars. I'm like, I want to be like those guys. And so I leaned on people who were way ahead of me in the game.
So I guess fast forward to now, what is your strategy that you're doing now, or what are some of the key things that you're looking for, when you're looking for properties, and I guess what kind of timelines are you trying to hit and how many a month? Like I'm just curious to learn. I've always been interested in fix and flips, but I'm one of those people that's a little too scared to pick up a hammer personally.
Yeah. Oh, I don't touch the hammers. I still don't touch the hammers.
Oh, you don't?
I don't. Not a chance. The joke on my job site is if Brandon touches a hammer, take it out of his hands. Okay. My skills are check writing, giving credit card number. I mean, my skills are assessing the deal, finding the. I'm the CEO, right? The CEO of Publix is not checking your groceries out. They're not even at a store, right? They are putting the right people in place to keep the wheel rolling.
Now I'm getting why you and Anders know each other.
Yeah.
Anders has worked on a lot of my houses.
That makes sense.
Up until last year, I mean, listen, in COVID years, 20, 21, and 22, we all look like geniuses. Okay, everybody was afraid at the beginning of COVID, thinking, I didn't know what I was going to do in that point. Man, maybe I'm not going to be able to flip any more houses, but it was really the opposite. Strategies changed a little bit in the last year. Up until 2022, the market literally was pointed straight up. I mean, we all looked like geniuses. I couldn't buy houses fast enough in 20 and 21 and 22. I was just borrowing money from, hey, you'll loan me money for that? I had developed some relationships with some guys who had a lot of money. So Garth Brooks had friends in low places. I had friends with deep pockets. I developed relationships with guys who trusted me with their money. And so at that point I had hired employees. I had found a good plumber, one of which is on this podcast. Like I found the right guys who could do the work, do it quickly, affordably. Yeah, it's all about finding the right group of people, having the right people in your Rolodex, right?
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that you were hiring out the work, because Anders had a completely different strategy where he just did everything himself, and I was kind of thinking the only way to do a fix and flip is to do it profitably, you have to do the work yourself. So
so for you, Brandon, you also basically have you kind of have your own electrical company and like general contracting.
Yeah, so
company,
fast
correct? That you
forward
run
now.
underneath, right?
Yeah, fast forward. I got my contractor's license in 2019, I believe it was. Because in Florida, you have to have employees who are doing construction work. You technically, and especially in Pinellas County, they either have to have their own license or they have to be W-2 employees of. I learned that the hard way. Even things like flooring and painting and cabinets, stupid stuff like that, still require a license here in Pinellas County. You don't have to pull a permit, but you have to be a licensed professional has to do it. Sounds kind of crazy because any of the three of us could paint walls. I could hire Anders to paint my walls, but he doesn't have a painting license. So, well, the chances of getting called are slim, but I got called a few times. So I realized, all right, shoot, I want to do this above board. And so I got my contractor's license and started hiring employees. I mean, now I run it through payroll. I'm up to 11 full-time construction workers. I quickly realized that at every house, not every house do I need a plumber. If I'm just keeping the sink where it is, my guys could sometimes, mostly, change plumbing out. But every house requires some kind of electrical stuff. And plumbing, if you screw it up, you get wet. Electrical, if you screw it up, it hurts. And so, again, having an entrepreneurial mindset, I went out. I wanted to hire a full-time electrician because I always wanted to be able to call him and say, hey, I need you, even if it's just, I need you to change the light switches, ceiling fans, move an outlet here, move an outlet here. So I went out and found a qualifier, an old retired guy with a license who wanted to make money. And so he became a partner in the business. I would pay him a monthly salary for his license. He doesn't do any work. He is a 75-year-old guy sitting in Port Charlotte who collects my check every month. But he's a partner in the business, and so the electrical company is licensed. So anybody who works under the electrical company is covered. Mm-hmm. And, that was my way of bringing electrical in-house, so to speak. So I have 2 employees on the electrical side. I have 11 W-2 employees, and then 3 more Hispanics who don't have Social Security numbers. So they still work for me full time, but I can't put them on payroll because you have to have a Social Security number to be on payroll. So they're paid every Friday. So,
do you think you're also fluent in Spanish, which I
see? Yes.
I discovered randomly when we were on a job site and you just started spouting off on the phone in perfect Spanish. Do you think that gave you any kind of edge in this business too? Or is it just really convenient? Yeah?
Both. It helps. And now, in the last year, I bought a roofing company. It's also very helpful. I do surprise a lot of people because I think, as you can tell from the video, I am not Hispanic. I could not ever be confused for one. But it definitely, gave me access to labor that otherwise I couldn't communicate with. Good, hardworking people that just want to work, and it does help.
Also, to I wanted to go back on something else. When you were saying you basically got friends with deep pockets that you're using to fund these deals, are you always generally trying to borrow money and use that to fund your deals, or do you partner on certain things, or kind of how do you structure that, or how you feel about partnerships?
So it depends on who it is in terms of what they want for their money. I attended some networking meetings, and people quickly, I got a reputation of being just a good, honest guy who was smart with money and other people's money. So I kind of had a few different people, an interest rate. So hard money loan, 10% interest annually and 2 points up front, or 12% interest and 3 points. At that point, those terms didn't necessarily matter as much. One, because the housing market was going straight up, and two, you just kind of calculate in those holding costs as part of the deal. $100,000 in cash. I only wanted to use my own cash. I can't even do one deal. Nowadays, you can't buy anything for $100,000. But if I took that same 100 and I wanted to buy a house and I only needed 25 grand to fix it up, if I could find somebody to loan me money to buy it, I could take 25 grand and fix it up. Now I could take that 100 grand and do that type of deal 4 times if I needed 25. So I was able to I was able to multiply the number of houses I was able to do at a time. If you're just doing one at a time, you're limiting yourself on how much money you can make. Especially when the housing market was going up, I was borrowing as much as I could to do as many deals as I could.
So what kind of networking groups were you going to? Was it real estate specific, or was it the Chamber of Commerce?
No, real estate meetings, the Tampa Bay Real Estate, the RIA, the Real Estate Investors Association. You don't have to try very hard. If you know how to type the word Google, you can find a networking meeting in real estate every night of the week. There's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of people who, especially as the housing market was going up, there's a lot of people who had a lot of money that they just wanted to loan it to somebody who was going to go out and use that money. Because they'll loan you money and they'll put a mortgage on the house. So they're protected. If you don't pay them, they've assessed the deal before they loan me the money, and they know that the house is worth enough that if I just completely don't do anything, if I don't pay my monthly mortgage, they'll foreclose on the house and take it back from me. And they were comfortable with the amount of money they loaned to me because they were comfortable owning my house at that price if they had to. So, but you get yourself established in those kind of meetings, then you can't walk up to a meeting the first time and say, hey, I'd like to borrow 300 grand. But you go to the meetings every week and people learn who you are and get comfortable with you, then people start to say, hey, I'd love to partner with you, loan money to you. So borrowing money with just an interest rate was one type of deal that I would find with people. I would find others that wanted, instead of just the fixed rate of interest, wanted to be an equity partner. So they would share in the upside or downside. They would share in the risk. And met them through bigger pockets, met them through these networking meetings. I got to the point, Anders worked on a lot of them, where I didn't have to put any of my own money in the deal once it got to that. Guys that would loan the entire purchase and the entire rehab and get 50% of the profit.
Wow. I was just going to ask about that.
It's a great deal for them. One in particular, we did probably 20 deals together. He lives in Washington, D.C. He didn't help me. I mean, he could use Zillow to analyze the deal himself before we committed to the deal. But other than that, he wrote the check at the beginning, and he'd like to see updated photos and stuff like that, and we'd keep the spreadsheet so he knew where we were money-wise. And then at the end, he got 50% on the profit on the upside.
And he's probably ecstatic with it, I'm sure.
Every time. Likewise, I was ecstatic because I got 50% profit and used zero of my own dollars. If I don't have to put any of my own money, I could do as many of those as I have capacity for at that point, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, it's a great deal for both of us, right? I mean,
do you ever get worried about the the values of homes crashing again after purchasing a property and putting all the money into rehab. Like, I guess how do you deal with that sort of emotion?
In the last year, I have, yes. Um, I sort of slowed down buying flips. One, interest rates went from 2.5 or 3 to 6 or 7. Buyers who could afford houses when they could borrow money at 3% can no longer afford as much house when they have to pay 7% for their money instead of 3. And so, yeah, I started shifting my mindset to more rentals. The rental
Okay.
market has kind of become in Pinellas County. There's only so much dirt, and everybody wants to live here. And every investor friend I know that has a lot of rentals, I always ask him, "Hey, John, do you have any vacancies?" He's like, "No, man. As soon as I can't even finish it, we can't even fix it back up before I've got 10 people knocking down the door to rent it."
Mm-hmm.
And a year or two ago, when you were selling a house, you couldn't list it high enough. I mean, we would list a house at 400 and we get offers at 450, 475. You're like, okay, great. So you'd list the next one even higher. You'd say, man, I'll shoot for 425, and you're still getting offers higher. Now I feel like that's what's happening with rental rates. We look at a deal and you think, man, I think I can rent that out for $1,500. And so you run the numbers and you buy a house with that. And then you tell somebody, I don't know, I'd rent it to you for 18 or 1900, and people are like, done, yes, I'll take it right now. And so I feel like the higher interest rates has caused more people to keep renting.
Gotcha.
And it's hard to find rentals. I don't know if you guys own or rent, but it's hard to find a good rental. And as soon as
It is.
I mean, I have a duplex, and I have a tenant who's been there for 3 years, and he called me last week and said, "Hey, I'm moving out." Now, normally, a tenant moving out to a landlord is like, "Oh, shoot, like I got to get somebody there quick. Crap, I'm going to miss out on income." Now, I was nice and had kept his rent. He was a good tenant, so I didn't increase him as much as I could have. Now, with the rental rates going up so high, instead of thinking, shoot, I don't like hearing that, I'm thinking, sweet, I can get a couple $100 more a month for his unit. And so now that's kind of news to my ears, as opposed to dreading hearing that, his tenant's moving out, I'm going to have a vacancy.
So when the market was just shooting straight up, did you have any rentals at that point too, or were you just strictly flips?
I own and have owned a duplex over in Oldsmar, and then my other rental is a self-storage facility.
Oh,
Those are bigger pockets. Taught me about self-storage facilities. I stumbled upon both the two deals, the duplex in Oldsmar and the self-storage facility. I stumbled upon those, got pretty lucky, stole them both, very low, and so I've had those two. When the flipping market was going so crazy, I only have a certain amount of hours in my day. I didn't want to pay a property manager to collect a check every month, so I focused all my time on buying rehabs. But now as the flipping business is going away, I've focused more on finding good rentals that I could find and rent out in long term.
and is that something you're taking as are you starting to still buy kind of a rehab or like a rental that needs work and then fix it up? And if you're doing that,
Absolutely.
how are you sort of getting your money back out of it, or I guess to pay yourself quickly, because you put money into it, but you don't see your return till over a period of time, right? Or are you refinancing or something to?
Well,
to
those
get your
same
rehab costs
those
out?
same partners who would loan money for rehabs are loaning money for rentals. Um, they get a percentage, they get an interest rate on their money, and they get a percentage of the equity. So they have a fix, and so the goal is buying it, like the one I have now, came to me just it's actually the tenant who's moving out. He does handyman type work, and he knew that I owned them, and he called me and said, "Hey, listen, I think I may have a deal for you. My buddy's mom died, and she had a duplex." And he said, "Are you interested?" Heck yeah, I'm interested, right? I'm the only one who looked at the deal. And it needed work. And so I went out and found a partner who loaned me the entire purchase and the first 20 grand of the rehab. And he's a 25% equity partner in it. And the ultimate goal is to refinance him back out into a longer term, refinance him with a fixed rate, longer term bank loan, something that, I guess the way I'm thinking of it is that it's a longer term play. Just my tenant's paying down my mortgage every month. Once I get the bank loan on it and the payment is principal and interest. If you think about it this way, if you borrow money on a house and just pay down the mortgage for the next 30 years out of your rent, in 30 years you're going to own the house free and clear. Okay? In the meantime, in that 30 years, as long as you can collect more rent than you're paying out in mortgage and taxes and insurance, then not only is your principal balance going down every month, but you make $200, $300, $400, $500 on that one. I hope to make $700 or $800 a month after. Now, $700 or $800 a month isn't going to pay for very much, but this is, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's passive income, right? People love it. It's passive income. I go to the mailbox they send it Venmo every month, but the first of the month, the check comes in. Doesn't get any easier than that, right? So if you think about it, as the rehab market has gone away, my mind has shifted more towards passive income and increasing my rental portfolio.
Gotcha.
Because one house at $700 a month isn't going to make my retirement or isn't going to pay my bills. But if you do that 10 times a month, all of a sudden you're making, $7,000 a month in passive income. It's not horrible. And once you get tenants in place, occasionally, breaker pops, toilet clogs, whatever, the stupid stuff. But if you just forget about rental market increases and forgetting about market value increases, if I just stuck with the house, let's say it was worth 200 grand and I borrowed 200 grand. In 30 years, I will have made a little bit of money every month for 30 years, and I'll have a $200,000 house that I own free and clear in 30 years. So that's $200,000 of retirement money or whatever. That doesn't account for any kind of increases that you can make more when the rental market goes up. It doesn't account for the fact that the house might be worth 400 grand in 30 years. But I think, historically, house values have just gone up and up and up. Obviously, there was 2008 that bottomed out, and there's kind of the flattening that's going on now. But historically speaking, the houses have gone up and up and up and up and up. So,
And so on this deal that you're talking about, where the guy that financed it, he was a 25% partner. Did you have other partners that were different percentages as well, or other 25% partners as well, or
Nope.
how did you structure that deal?
Nope, I'm the 75% partner.
So he financed it, you did the work, and man, that's a good deal.
Right? It's a good deal for him, and it's a good deal for me. He stopped by the house a few times, checked it out, give some opinions, but He's 25%, I'm 75%. So, you know, again, I have the crew to run it, and, you know, it's a good deal for everybody. So,
do you do the property management for that property?
he actually, he's one of those that I told you early on has hundreds of houses. He's established a property management system. So in part of his 25% equity, my job is fixing it up, and his job is going to be managing it, taking the phone calls collecting the rent, taking the plumbing. My plumbing's clogging at 11 o'clock at night. Phone call. He's established a system with an assistant and whatever. If it's something construction related, if it's hey, my window's not opening, okay, well, he's going to call me because I'm a contractor and I have workers and we do a lot of windows. So depending on what it is, I'll help do some of the repairs. But that was part of it, is that he has a part of the process that I lack, which is a property management system. Like he has a whole, so.
Makes sense.
Wow.
So I want to bring it back to the, you mentioned briefly that you have the self-storage facility. I've always been interested in those, and like the self-car wash facilities and those types of investments.
I would love to own one of those too. Yes.
I would love a car wash. How has your experience been with that? Has it been pretty much passive income, as passive as passive income can be, or?
Totally. It's about 45 minutes away. It's a small facility. It's not gated. It doesn't have an office. It doesn't have, I don't have utilities. There's no power, water, or sewer on the building. It's literally just a big empty garage.
Wow.
And people store their crap. I mean, I've owned it since 2014, never met half the tenants, but I see their check come the first of every month. They may not even know what the heck's in their unit, but they just keep sending the check. They know that somewhere in there is mom's old, buffet table or, coffee table that mom.
I feel like those deals can be hard to find. There's not a whole lot of them, and probably high competition, or more than there used to be. How did you find that deal?
So, working at Raymond James, playing around on Craigslist under businesses for sale. It was a retiring couple. They were in their 70s, and they listed it on there as businesses for sale. Now, reading Bigger Pockets, people raved about self-storage, and I thought, man, I'd love to buy one. And they had it posted, and they wanted $150,000 for it. It's a 6,300 square foot building. So it's 30 feet wide. It's 210 feet long. So it's this long, skinny building. And it has 21 garage doors on one side and 21 on the other. So it's 42 units. And they wanted $150,000 for it. And so I went back and forth with them, had them provide me the financials. I have an MBA which in business finance, so I'm used to looking at financials. So show me your financials. Like, is it worth $150,000? They ran every expense through there. They lost $10,000 every year because they would put their IHOP bill on there. Their gas every month would be run through the business. And so I said, guys, I can't take this to a bank and borrow any money on it. You've lost money every year. Bank's going to say the business isn't worth it. And I said, where'd you get the 100? How'd you come up with 150? And they said, we had to start somewhere. I'm like, great. All right. These, at that point it was 25% occupied. Today's August 1st. If you gave them a check today, they might deposit it by Halloween. And if you didn't pay them, if you hadn't paid them since April, eventually, we know Anders, he'll pay us eventually. It's like, that's how they ran the business. They just didn't care. And so, through Bigger Pockets, I learned about seller financing. Because I said, I can't get money from the bank. So I came up with the idea. I said, I'll give you $90,000 for it. They were like, no, that doesn't work. So we met in the middle at 120. Okay. I paid $20 a square foot for this building. So I don't know if you know anything about new construction, but $20 a square foot is, I can't build a shed for $20 a square foot. Okay. I got them to agree to take 40,000 down. They were getting about 1,000 in rent a month. And I got them to agree to take 40,000 down, $1,000 a month for the next 3 years on that other 80,000. But if you know what a balloon payment is, so I'm going to borrow money, we're going to set it, we're going to use 20 years as the term or 30 years as the term. Most people have a 30-year mortgage. A balloon payment is, I know you've got a term of 30 years, but you have to pay this balance off by the end of the third year or the end of the 5 year. That's a 5-year balloon. You have to make, so I couldn't make, so what I did was I told them that I would pay $1,000 a month. We made an amortizing loan, so it was principal and interest, so my balance would go down every month. But I had to pay them off in full in 3 years or less. The reason I did that is I thought, for one, they were 70 years old. They wouldn't have lived to see another 30 years of payments. And it gave me time to get the property actually rented up, go to a bank, get long-term financing on it, and pay them off.
Damn, that's smart. And for them, they kept getting their $1,000 a month, like they have been for the last.
But they didn't have to collect the check.
Years.
They lived close to Orlando, so it was 2 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
They were half retired. They were just old retired beach bums, and so they thought, listen, I collect the same $1,000 a month, and I don't have to deal with the tenants or deal with any of it. And so in 12 months, just by actually paying attention to who was there and whether they paid what their due date or not, and a little bit of, I didn't do hardly any advertising, but in a year I went from 25% occupancy to 95% occupancy. So all of a sudden now this thing's pulling in more than $3,000 a month in gross income.
Wow.
And the only thing I had to pay again, I told you, it has no power, so I don't have to pay a power bill. It has no water. There's no toilets, nothing. I don't have to pay a water bill. There's no sewer. I didn't pay anything. I paid taxes and insurance. And the taxes were $100 a month, and the insurance was $100 a month. So my monthly payments are $1,000 to them, $100 to taxes, and $100 to insurance. $1,200 a month. So I started grossing $3,200 a month. So after a few months of that, I was able to go to a bank, and conservatively, they said, Brandon, this thing's worth $250. Okay, I paid $120 for it a year ago. Mm-hmm. They said, we'll loan you $150,000 on it. Your payment's still going to be $1,000 a month. So in 12 months, I got $150 back from the bank. I paid off that $75,000 I still owed them, put the other money back in my pocket, put a new roof on it. I still pay $1,000 a month to the bank. Taxes gone up. It's more like $150 a month for taxes and $150 for insurance. So I pay about $1,300 a month. Don't have any money out anymore because the $40 I put out, I got back when the bank loaned me money. Mm-hmm. I got more than out, right? So I actually have no money in the deal now.
Wow.
I get people calling me all the time, and people are like, oh, I'd probably give you $400,000 for it. And I'm like, no, I'm good. So that's that. If you read on Bigger Pockets, that's that BRRRR method, BRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance. Yeah, I could never find it. I literally stumbled upon it on Craigslist, right?
Yeah, I just looked on Craigslist. All I could find just now was industrial, like, refrigerators. yeah, or lost connections, or you get a lot of crazy people on Craigslist. So,
man, I've never really been excited about self-storage. I always hear people talking about it, but that sounds like really, really nice. That's a great deal.
I haven't been to the property in 6 months.
Wow.
I mean, it's literally a block construction building with a new shingle roof, and the walls are divided by 2x4s and drywall, like an interior wall of a house. There's no maintenance to it. The thing was built in the 80s. So there's no upkeep. We painted it a couple years ago, and
there's some Sorry to interrupt. I was
You're
just going
good.
to say that there's some self-storage lots where people just store, like their RVs or boats and stuff like that. It's literally just a lot that you just put a sign on and a fence.
all it is. It might have a fence. They pay somebody to keep the grass cut. It's perfect. Yeah. RV parking. I wish I had that at the self-storage facility. It's surrounded by things. I basically own about 20 feet of pavement all the way around the house, all the way around the building. There's nothing else. There's a mobile home park behind me and another retail building in front of me. So I can't park RVs there to add any more income. But
what do you think it would cost you to build something like that in the same area?
a 6,300, I mean, a couple $100,000. I mean, it's 6,000 square feet of block construction.
Wow.
And gosh, nowadays it's about 80 squares of roof. Nowadays, again, I own a roofing company. I would charge about $35,000 for that roof. That's just the shingles. That doesn't count the trusses and the plywood, right? So $250,000 probably by the time I don't know, that's 42 garage doors. Okay. What's a new garage door? I mean, there's no motorized garage door. It's literally just a roll-up door. So what does a door and a track cost? $15,000 to $1,500, and you got to plus the labor. That's 42 times those, right? So probably $250,000, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not including the land and.
Right.
Man, yeah, that seems like a screaming deal. Well, thanks for sharing about that. I was just curious. I know it's a little different than what we were talking about, but.
I don't know if we got much else. I mean, other than that, like if anyone, what advice would you have for someone who's like thinking about getting into investing in real estate? Like, where would you tell someone to start? Where would you start if you were starting today with nothing?
It's a little harder today because everybody, as the prices had gone up from 2014 to 2022, everybody and their mom started flipping them, right? So to get into flipping houses today, you're way late in the game, like way late. That's like trying to buy, Facebook stock. Like you should have bought it 15, 20 years ago when whatever. It's like you're just way late to the game trying to flip houses these days. Rentals, if you can make positive cash flow, rentals are the way to go because someone else is paying your mortgage and your equity grows every month in that house because they're paying your principal and interest, and every month you owe the bank less than you owed them last month, and you owe them a year from now, you owe them less than you owed them this year.
So just look for a way to get into rentals is the name of the game now.
And then buy and hold.
Yeah.
Buy and hold and don't look back.
And on the market deals, the sign, the MLS deal, the realtor sign in the yard, I don't think is the way to. I've bought very few houses from a for rent sign or for a for sale sign in the yard. The house I live in, I bought that house. It was an on the market house, but everything else I buy was an off market deal.
And is that like a lot of wholesalers or just your connections and
wholesalers?
Yeah.
Wholesalers. Because somebody else has already mailed out 10,000 postcards to landlords who are doing an eviction or whatever criteria they found. They've mailed out the postcards. They took the phone calls. They took the cursing and said, "Stop sending me the stupid letter." They took the tire kicker. They took all the tire kicker phone calls. They went and looked at the house. They've assessed the deal. They did all the legwork for you. They basically come to you and say, "Hey, it's $250,000 for the house. Do you want it or not?" You do run some math, and you can decide pretty quickly. So Could somebody go out and buy a list of people to mail it to and send out postcards and take all the phone calls? Sure. Or you could just go out and introduce yourself to a bunch of wholesalers who just want to email out a new property, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get 20 or 30 emails every day of properties from wholesalers that aren't on the market. The less competition you have, the better chance of finding a good deal. Now, wholesalers have a lot of people on their list, but if it's on the market, any of us could access it through Realtor.com, Zillow, any of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think buying a house on the market is for the house you want to live in, that you want to move your family into. If you're trying to rent it, you've got to find networking meetings or wholesalers or other people. I mean, I could call up 5 people who have rentals and say, listen, I really want to buy a rental. Sell me one. Fine. I could make phone calls and find somebody who has a rental that they want to sell. But that's from getting out, shaking hands, introducing myself to people. You've got to put in a little legwork to find other ways of finding deals besides setting up a search in Zillow type stuff.
That's great advice. Can you find wholesalers just online? If you look on Google and find a company?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the better way is asking people, Brandon, who do you have on your networking list, or going to some of these networking meetings. I mean, the way I found these people is going to these meetings. And guys would say, hey, I'm a new wholesaler. I'm looking for buyers. Hey, here's my email address. And,
Yeah, networking is very underrated, I feel like, by a lot of people. I've joined a networking group and gotten some business out of it and great connections, many of which have been on the podcast already. And networking
it's huge. It's huge. If you bought your first house and you had no idea, you wanted to, I don't know, move the toilet from one wall to the other. Okay, but you didn't know any plumbers. Do you go to Google? No, those people are going to charge you retail. Or do you call somebody like me who says, yeah, I have a plumber. Use my name and he'll give you the investor rate, right? It pays to know people, or it pays to know people who know people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
I agree.
Man.
But you don't figure that out without getting out there and meeting people, just connecting with people and figuring out who knows what. I mean, people call me, hey, Brandon, do you have a good plumber? Do you have a good AC guy? Right? That kind of stuff. It is only done through networking. So,
Man.
Makes sense. Well, good stuff, Brandon. This was great. I definitely learned a lot here.
I mean, I've been working with you for a little while, but I definitely learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know about you, and feel like I got some good tips and stuff. So it was awesome to have you on, man.
Yeah. You've worked on quite a few houses of mine. So, I mean, yeah.
Hopefully many more.
Yeah.
Right, Anders?
Yeah, man. Yeah. All right. Well, you want to wrap it up here? Anything else, Brandon? Like, if you want to, I don't know if you want people to be able to find you or, reach out if they want to, if there's anything like that, or if not, that's up to you. But, I don't know. Anyone who wants to try to do a deal, I have no idea who's going to see this podcast. So
I'm always open to partnering, whether it's a first-time investor, whether it's, I'm starting to do more deals where I provide the expertise and the labor and the discounts that I've found from AC guys and plumbers and Lowe's and all of the discounts that I've established, and I'll just do the rehab for someone. They can pick the materials, or I can give them advice or tell them where, and I just provide a fee. I charge a fee on top, a percentage on top. So people get to piggyback off of my connections and my expertise and discounts, and I manage the whole project. So I'm always open to stuff like that. It works out great for them and it works out great for me. Yeah, like I said, I'm a licensed contractor and have a lot of full-time employees. So always needing new things to keep them busy, especially as I'm not buying as many so quickly now. So
That makes sense. Do you have a website that people can find you on? And if you want us to share your contact info, we can.
I don't because, I mean, I can give you the phone number, but I don't have a website because up until last year I was just buying and selling my own stuff. So
Yeah.
I didn't have a need for anybody to see any website type stuff. So the roofing company has a website, but that's a little different.
Well, we can put your phone number in the description, and hopefully, if you guys have any questions or want to work with Brandon, feel free to give him a call.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. This was awesome.
Right.
Appreciate having you on.
All right.
No problem.
See you guys.
All right. Thanks.